What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're building our full project using IDP and Databricks. Now, I'm super excited for this project because this is a really great use case for using IDP. We're going to be working with financial data, and we're going to have invoices, purchase orders, and receipts, and we're going to be dumping them into a catalog within Databricks. There's going to be different data that we want to extract from each document. And so what we're going to do is we're going to parse it out using AI parse document. After that, we'll want to extract the data that we want and put it into an actual table. I'm going to show you how to do it. It's super easy to write the code, but I don't want to put all the data from all these different files into one table. So we're going to use AI classify to kind of group these and categorize these so we know what data to put in each table. At the very end, we'll drop in some more files. We'll run through the entire process, and you can see how now we have this entire system set up where you just have to upload the files, run your code, and you have your new data within your tables. This is a fantastic use case, not just for financial data, but basically any type of data that you'd want to do this with. And so I'm really excited to show you how to do this. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump on my screen and get started. All right, so let's come over here to our catalog. And of course, we've been working within this IDP and this YouTube lesson. Now, we don't want to continue in the YouTube lesson. We want to create a new one. So we're going to come over here. We're going to go to create. We're going to create a new volume, and we're going to call this one our final project. And this is for all the marbles. You're going to build out this project. You're going to go tell your mom about it. You're going to be really excited. Let's go browse this. Let's select our files. And right in here, we have all these invoices, we have a lot of different purchase orders, and we have different receipts. And within our new files, these will be the files that we actually drop in after we've completed everything. We're gonna drop in extra files, run through the process again. So we're not adding these new files in, but we're gonna add in all of these files right here, and we're gonna open them up. We can go ahead and upload these, and they should just upload really quickly into our volume right here. Now, let's go take a look at one of these files just really quickly, just so we can see what it looks like. And this is opening up in Microsoft Edge. Looks like there's some text overwrite. That must be a Microsoft Edge thing, I don't know. But this is what our invoice looks like. And we're not gonna go and look at each one right now, but we will in a little bit. But we can pull out as much or as little information as we want. If we just wanna pull out the invoice ID and maybe the total amount for each invoice, that's all we want to do, sure, why not? Or if we want to include, their address and all this other information, we can. In the past several lessons, we've shown how to get data out of tables like this. And so if we wanted to pull all of this data in and see each of the kind of items that we had, we can do that. For this lesson, because this is a lot of different types of files, we're probably just going to stick with some basic information, and then we're going to show how we can extract that data and then put it into a table so it's a lot more usable than just sitting in our files. So this is our invoice, and all we're going to do is we're going to start with creating a new workspace. And I actually need to come up here. Let's just create a new notebook, and I do want to have it in SQL. I'm going to rename this as our final project, just in case we need to come back to it later. But the first thing that we need to do is just read in our files. That's all we need to do. So we're just going to say select everything, and then we'll say from, and then we'll do read underscore files, and we need to put in our file path here. Now this should be in quotes /volumes /IDP /default /final project. Let's go ahead and run this. So now we can see all of our files, the modification time, or the time that we should put it in there, the length, so we see that there is data in there, and then we have our content. Now we haven't used AI parse document yet, so it's just not reading it in properly. This isn't the real content. But now we can see we have all of our files in here. We have our invoices, our purchase orders, and our receipts. Now, what we're going to want to do is we're going to pull out and we're going to parse this first, and then we're going to classify, and then we're going to extract everything and place it into the tables. And so what we need to do is come right down here, and we're going to start out by parsing out the content. I will be adding it to some kind of temporary tables as we go, just so we can keep using them in later queries. But let's start out by just saying select, and we're going to select the path. And that's going to be this, and let me go up. That's going to be this path right here, and let's read this in. So I'm going to say from this volume, and then I just want the content. So I'm going to do AI parse document, Then we'll open this up and we're going to put in the content and we'll put this as parsed content. Now let's go ahead and run this just to make sure it's working properly, and then we'll put it into that temp table so that we can use it in future queries down below. Now that we've parsed out these documents, we can come in here and let's actually go over just a little bit. We have a lot of data in here, right? We have, you can see we have tables, just like we had in the previous lessons. We have tables of data. If we wanted to pull that out, we could. We're not going to in this lesson, but we know how to do that from previous lessons. But we have all of our invoice data, all of the website information, as well as the total information right over here. So we have our total. And this is the kind of data that we'll be pulling out from each one of these. And so you can see we got all that from all of our different files. We parsed out the content. Let's actually create our temp table because I want to kind of store this so that we can use it later. So we're going to say create or replace. And I always just do that kind of as a default because if I run this later and it's already stored in there, I want it to replace it. Otherwise, I'm going to start getting errors saying this has already been created. And so I just do that by default, knowing that later I'm going to come back and use it again. So I'm going to create a table and we'll call this parsed underscore data. And then we'll say as here. So now when we run this, we can reuse this parsed data table that we are creating within this query right here. Now it says no rows returned, and that's okay because we're doing a create or replace table here. If we just come right down here and run it, you'll see it worked properly. That's just kind of a default output that you're going to get when you create these tables. Let's just select everything from this table and you'll see it's all there. Now, while that's running, and okay, there it is, but while that's running, this data right here is in a perfectly fine state, but it can be a little bit difficult to kind of look through this and know what we want to pull out. And I actually think it'll be a little bit easier just for us to be able to see it. We can kind of loop through this and make it a little bit easier to read. I'll write out the code. I may even use AI to help write this. We're basically going to clean this up before we actually classify it. And in fact, cleaning it up a little bit might help the classification anyway. And so we're going to kind of clean this up and then we're going to classify it next. So let's come right up here. And I'm going to start writing it out. We'll see if AI picks up on it while we're writing it because it often does, especially within Databricks. But let's come up here to our select statement. So we're going to have our path. We'll put a comma here. And then we're going to use concat underscore WS. We're going to put /n. That's just our new line. That's going to be our separator. Then we'll put a comma here. And then what we want to do is basically take out each of these elements. And so we're going to go in, we're going to take the elements, and we're going to transform them just a little bit. It's nothing crazy complex. I'm just going to write it all out and kind of talk as I go so we can get it all written down. So I'm going to say transform. And then within this transform, we're going to say parsed content. So that's this column right here. And then we're going to do a colon. We'll say document, and then we'll do another colon and say element, and I need to spell that right. And that's just right here, our document, and then our elements. And then I'm going to say as array, and then we'll do this right here, which is a variant, just like that. And of course, I spelled transform wrong. Transform, there we go. Once we specify our data, we'll do a comma here, and then we're going to do something like this. So we're going to say coalesce. And then we're going to try to cast this as a string. So we're going to say try cast, and eContent as string is exactly what I want. And then we'll do a comma and put our quotes right here. We'll enter down. This is basically everything we want. Then we'll say as doc underscore text. Let's try to run this. Now the syntax I might just be getting wrong. Let's try to diagnose this error using the AI helper here. Or the AI assistant, I believe is what it's called. And it's saying we don't need to put it as an array. Let's just accept it and try to run it. And let's see if it works. And again, we're getting an error here. Let's try to fix this. In the error, it's saying I need it as an array variant. I think I just wasn't using the right, maybe the right, what are these called? Less than or equal to. This is the exact syntax as I had before, but maybe with kind of the right thing right there. And that's what it was. I was just using the wrong symbol here, but this is exactly how I had it written before. So thanks AI. It looks like I had some syntax error in there. I wasn't using the right symbol or character right there. But now if we look at this doc text, it looks very different, right? This looks very human readable. And when we go to classify this, we don't have to do it this way. I just prefer it when I've been using it. I have been doing it like this. And so it makes it a little bit more easily readable. And then you can see, okay, here's our table. This is with our data in it. Here's another table with our data in it. And we can go down here to like a purchase order. We can see we have a bunch of table data right there. And then in here, we have some kind of header information. And all this is doing is putting it on a new line. We're transforming it, basically taking out each element and then placing it as a string on a new line. So now this looks ready to go. I think we're ready to classify this. And in fact, let's set this as a temp table or just as a table that we can use. So we're gonna say create or replace table. And let's call this one pretty_data. And we'll say as. So we're gonna set this one as pretty data just because it looks a lot better. And we're taking out a lot of kind of the unnecessary characters that we don't really need. And so now we're gonna take this pretty data and let's just confirm it's there. So we're gonna say select everything from pretty data. Let's go ahead and run that. Now what we need to do is classify this information. So we're gonna come up here, we're going to take everything, but then we'll add a classification to this. So we're gonna say AI classify, and then we need to pass through what we want it to classify it on. So of course, I'm just gonna do a tab here for the doc text. It's telling us to do these, but those are terrible. Let's write array here. And within our array, we want it to be either an invoice, a purchase order, or a receipt. So let's write that out. So we'll say invoice, purchase, order, a receipt. Am I spelling receipt right? R-E-I-P-T? Okay, great. And then if for whatever reason there was an other, we'll put an other there. I don't think we'll need it, but that's fine for now. And we'll call this as doc_classification. Let's go ahead and run this. Let's see how it looks. Now let's scroll down. And let's go over, and we have all these classifications on the far right. Let's just bring this over. So now we can see we have invoices, and that looks correct. We have our purchase orders, and those also look correct. And then we have all of our receipts. Now you have to remember, we're doing this classification based off of the information within it. We're not doing it based off of whether it says invoice right here or not, because sometimes this invoice might just come in as a number, 10119.pdf. And so we want to actually look at the contents of the document. And so we looked through here, we parsed through, we said, okay, this is for sure an invoice. And that was, of course, with the AI classify. And so that looks good. It doesn't matter what documents we drop in later, even if it's not labeled correctly with the PDF or with the actual title, it's still going to read in the contents and classify it properly. But this table right here has everything that we need. We have our data in it. We have our classification in it. And what we can now do is we can use this classification to filter down which ones we want, extract that data, and put it into a table. So we'll start with invoice. We'll say, let's extract the data we want from invoice, place it into the invoice table. Then we'll filter on purchase order, extract the data from the purchase order, and put that into a separate table. And then we'll do the same for receipts. So let's place this into a temp table just like we've been doing. We'll say create or replace, and we'll say table, and we'll do this as classified data, or we'll call it classified data. It sounds like we're a secret agent over here or some spy agency, but I assure you we're just classifying using AI classify, although I feel like a secret agent. Let's just confirm that this is in here properly. So we'll say select everything, and then we'll start filtering on it and then using AI extract to extract our data. Let's come down here. Let's go over, and this looks great. So here's what we'll do. We're gonna start really simply. We're just gonna say where the doc classification is equal to invoice. And let's run this. So now we're just filtered on our invoices. So with just this data, now we want to use AI extract to pull out the values we want. And then once we have it done for one of these file types, the invoices to start, we're gonna be able to basically copy down and just alter it a little bit. It's gonna be very quick. So let's come up here. We're gonna select everything. We're gonna do a comma here. And now we're gonna use AI_extract. We do wanna pass through both a doc text and an array here. So I am gonna keep that, but I'm gonna kind of format it a little bit better. And within this array, we need to specify what we're pulling out of the document. We can go to our raw document if we want. So we can come up here, just look at one of these invoices. Some of the data that I want to pull out is things like invoice, invoice ID, the due date, maybe the payment method, and let's do the total down here. Let's also pull out who it is. Now, there isn't an actual title for this. It doesn't say that this is the vendor name. I'm going to see if it's able to pick this up. I think it should. So let's come down here. Let's do vendor underscore name. And it's going to do a lot of autocorrect here, but I'm going to do vendor name. Let's go right down here. Let's do the invoice number. So within our quotes, we'll say invoice underscore number. Then we'll do a comma. We'll do the invoice underscore, I need to spell that right. Invoice underscore date. We'll go to our next one. We'll do the due underscore date. Let's come down here. Let's also get the payment method. So we'll do payment underscore method. And then lastly, let's get our total. And that's at the very bottom, right? We have this total right down here. So this is a little bit more difficult. We'll see if it's able to extract this. It absolutely should. I've used this quite a bit. I'm almost certain it's going to work very well. But now we need to close out this parentheses. Let's say as extracted. And let's go ahead and run this. I just noticed I accidentally did space invoice date. I'll correct that, but I won't run it again. But let's go, let's pull this down a little bit. Let's bring all this over and let's look at this extracted information. Now it's saying null for the invoice date, and that may be because I actually wrote it wrong. Let's try running this again. I think that space may have thrown it off just because I messed it up on my end. All right, let's come over here. And that's what it was. So I had that extra space there, just threw it off. Let's come through and just make sure it looks like these look correct. We can even pull up this document really quick. So let's pull up that 10119. We'll pull it up on this side just to see if it's extracting it properly. So it did pull in the vendor name without any specification. This doesn't say vendor name, so it's great that it pulls that out. So we have marketing, Riverbend Marketing Studio. There's the invoice dash, yep, that one looks correct. Invoice date 117, due date 117, payment method is the wire transfer, and then the total doesn't look correct. That's because I didn't put a comma here. And that's pure user error. Let's run this again and see if it gets the total right, because that's the one I actually think is going to be the most impressive for it to pull out, simply because it's in a table already. And so let's run this. Let's come over here and let's see if it took the total right. So 456.79 and everything is correct. So just a little fixing of this array right here purely because I messed up a few times. But now that we have this all good to go, now what we can do is we can pull out all this data, put it in its own columns and its own rows, and then we can place that data into a table. And that's actually quite easy. We're not copying. Let me actually place this. So I'm going to say create or replace. You guys know the gig. I'm going to call this invoice data. And we'll say as, and I need to say table here. So we're creating this invoice data table. And that's where we're then going to just kind of pull out the final values into its own columns and rows. We actually looked at how to do this in the last lesson. Let's go ahead. We're going to select everything from here. And all we're doing is we're specifying real quick. Let's come over. We're just going to take this extracted information. So let's come up here to the select. Let's just do the path, and then we'll come into each value and we're going to select it and put it into its own column essentially. So we'll do extracted dot, and then it even says what we can do here. So we're going to take out the vendor name first, and I'm going to hit tab to auto do a little bit of this, and due date and payment method, I'm going to hit tab as well. And the total, it's just auto correcting this all for me. And then I'm just going to rename these because I want the actual column headers to be correct. And we'll do vendor, we'll do as, and that's invoice. Let's call this invoice number. And then we'll do as invoice date, as due underscore date, as payment underscore method, and then last one as, and it should just be total. Now let's go ahead and run this. Let's make sure that this is all working properly. So now we have within each of our documents, we have our vendor name. Let me pull this down just a little. We have our vendor name. We have our invoice number, the invoice date, due date, payment method, and the total. And this all looks perfect. We don't have to pull in this path and put this data into it, but we can if we want to. But all we have to do is come right up here. And we're gonna do almost the same thing. We're gonna say create or replace. Now this is probably the most important one to do this on, because we're actually gonna say table. Now we're gonna do IDP dot, and all this is gonna do is gonna specify where in our catalog to place this data. Now we have to place this into an actual catalog. We can't just place it and call it here. We're gonna create this in just a sec, but we're gonna call this finance.invoices. We don't have this finance table yet, right? We have to create this. So I'm actually gonna come up here and I'm gonna create this. So I'm gonna say create schema if not exists, and we're just gonna call it finance. Now we just have to specify where it goes. So I'm gonna say IDP dot, and let's run this. And that should create it. Then we're gonna come down here, and now we're selecting all of this data into this IDP finances, and then we're labeling it invoices. So now we're gonna say as, and this is where it's gonna go. Let's go ahead and run this, and then let's go and check our catalog to make sure it got in there properly. So it looks like this worked well. Let's come over here, and we're gonna go to our catalog. We're gonna go down to our IDP, and now we have a new schema. We have finance, and then within it, we have our invoices. So now this is sitting just like a regular table would if you uploaded like a CSV file or something else, except we're working with an unstructured data format. This is not easy to pull this data in. And so we now have basically this pipeline where we can drop data in. Let's actually select our compute real quick and start this just so we can see the data. But we can select this data in, we can bring this data in, we can extract the data and place it into tables just like regular data, which is amazing. Now we can wait for this to show our sample data, or we could just go back to our workspace and query this data from this actual table now, which it's reading it in. Let's go to the very bottom. It's actually there. So now we can do code and we can say select everything from idp.finance.invoices. And let's read this in, because now it's just sitting like a regular table. So now this data is kind of permanently stored within Databricks, just like we would if we were uploading a CSV to a table, which is fantastic. This is awesome. And we have some documentation with the path. If we wanted to, we could have even included things like a timestamp here of when the data was here, but that goes beyond what we're trying to look at in this lesson. Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna repeat this and do the exact same thing, but for the other type of data. So let's come and bring this all the way down here. It's gonna be really similar. Let's just comment this out. And now instead of invoice, let's do our purchase. I think it's like this. Maybe I need to go back. Now, actually, while that's running, let me go back up to our classification. It's right up here. Let me get rid of this just for a sec. We want to revert this code back because we'll be running through this all again, but I just want to see what I called this. Oh, I called this a purchase space order. Okay, that's totally fine. I just wanted to make sure. Now let's go back down. Let's get our purchase space order. Now, these are not the things that we need from our data. And let's actually go into one of our purchase orders and take a look at this. So we have our buyer, we have our vendor right here, and it looks like we have some other information like currency. We have a date right here. And then we have our total. So let's pull out a few different things. Let's pull out our merchant name. Let's pull out maybe our PO number right here, as well as our PO date. And then we'll do our total amount just like we did before. I think these are all good kind of key things that we want to pull out. Let's get out of here. Let's come right here. Now we're going to call this a merchant name. We want the transaction date. And we'll do it just like that. and I spelled that wrong. Let's actually pull up this one more time because we have the PO number, the PO date, and the total. So let's get that PO date, purchase order date, and then we'll do the total. And let's get rid of these. There we go. And I think we just need to close out this parentheses. Now let's just look at this first. Let's make sure that it's running properly. And then once we verified that, we'll just continue on with the process like we did in the previous one. So let's come over here. Let's look at our extracted information. So we have transaction date as null. That's not good. Let's just see if I need to pull it as something else. But then we have our purchase order date. And I think the transaction date is the same thing as the purchase order date. I actually don't want or don't need both of these. I only need one. Let's come over here because we have the purchase order date, which is this information right here. I wanted the PO number. That's what I need. So let's actually replace this with the PO underscore number. And let's run this. The best thing I love about this is just that it knows kind of what I'm saying. I don't have to go and like hard code in anything. It uses AI to go in and extract the information that I need. So this is looking great. And let's verify this by let's get the Hawthorne 25 document. So Hawthorne 25, let's get rid of this. Let's come over here. So we have Riverbend Marketing Studio. We have the PO 24371. We have 2025-16, and then we have 5,219.45. That is perfect. So I think we are rocking and rolling with this one. Now we just need to create this. So we're going to create this as purchase order data, and let's run this. And then what we have to do is extract each value just like we did and place it into a table. So let's copy this. I don't know if I did that before. Let's do select everything from this table, and then we'll start extracting each value. And so we're going to do it just like this. We're going to select the path, and then we're going to do extracted dot, and then we'll start pulling out each one. And let's see if it does this for us. There we go. This is perfect. It just tabbed it and kind of knew what I wanted at this point. Let's just run this just to make sure it gets everything right. And there we go. That's perfect. And let's place this into a new table, which I'm going to create. So we'll come back up. We will take this right here. And actually we don't, because that's the schema. We just have to create the table. That's it. So let's come back down here. Look, some of this I'm doing, just out of memory. So I apologize. I'm going to call this purchase underscore order. And we have our purchase order. That's going to be our new table. Let's go ahead and create this. And then we'll go check it out. And then the last one we'll do is receipts. And then we'll do kind of where we put all of our new data in as well. Looks like this should work. Let's go to IDP, go to finance, and now we have our purchase order in here. I'm looking at sample data. We don't need to, but here's our data. So that's our sample data, but it is all of our data. But if we had thousands and tens of thousands of files, then, this would just be a small sample. So this looks perfect. We are just cruising through this. And the very last one that we're going to do is our receipts. Let's scroll down. That was our purchase order. Let's go right here and pull this right here and put it at the bottom, because now we just need a filter on receipts. And so we'll say receipts, and I never know if I spell that right. It's I before E except after C. Hey, that's kind of the one time it actually works. All right, let's go down to a receipt right here. And within this receipt, we got some good information. One, we have the name of, the parking area. We have the receipt number, the date and time, and we have a total. Now, again, all these totals have been within these tables, and it's extracted them very well, which I've been really happy about. We could also pull the payment method. We can kind of pull anything we want from these. I'm just going to try to keep it kind of simple, but let's come back here because now we need receipts. So let's come in here. We'll just keep this as the merchant name. Let's see what else we want to pull. Let's do the receipt number instead of the PO number. So I'll do receipt number. Let's go back. Let's just do transaction date. That's what we're going to call it. We'll see what it extracts exactly, and we'll do the total. So we'll do here, we'll do transaction date, and let's go ahead and run this. Now, which one are we looking at here? We have the 41151. I'm going to pull this over and do it just like this real quick. I really shouldn't be doing that. And in fact, let's get rid of this, even though I already created it. Yeah, this doesn't look as good. I'm going to revert back. You know what? I'm doing it. I'm going back. I'm going to do it like this. And it looks like we didn't extract anything. Let's go back up. This is just part of the process. All right. Sometimes we got to figure out what happened here. Let's go back up. We called it receipt. That's why. Sometimes it's the simplest thing. I called it receipts here, but we filtered on the wrong thing. Let's go ahead and run this, and we should get an output this time. And there we go. Let's go over to this right-hand side, and let's find the 41551. That's this one. Let's just see what data it pulled out and if it looks correct. So let's look at this. We have Skyline Parking, R347861, 2015-13. That's just the transaction date. We didn't do transaction date and time. We probably could have. And then we have our total of 288.16. Perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. Now, we already created this by accident. So let's just come down here, and we're going to make sure it's in there. Select everything from this table. We'll extract the specific things that we want. Let's run this again. Because again, I forgot we had receipts before. We do have to run this actually. Because before we had receipts, we put no data in this table, and so it didn't actually work. But now it should work when we do this. That's good. Let's go down and run this again. We should actually have data in here, thank goodness. All right, now we just have to do exactly what we did before. We're gonna take just the path, do a comma, we'll do extracted dot, and let's see. Oh, I need to do extracted. Extracted dot, and I'll do tab, tab, tab. And let's see if it does it. There we go. Thank you, autocomplete. What would I do without you? I love autocomplete. It's great. We have merchant, we have the receipt number, transaction date, and the total. This looks perfect. Let's go ahead and place this. I'm just going to go back and copy. I could just copy this, because then we'll place it right here. We'll call this idp.finance.purchase orders. And let's run this. Looks like it ran well. Let's go back to our catalog. Got IDP. Within our finance, we now have, and I put purchase orders. Oh goodness, this is receipts. Oh geez, what a mistake. What a mistake. I'm gonna have to delete that table now. Oh my Lanta. All right, this is not purchase orders. I had done, it's receipts. And I called it purchase orders on this one too. Oh, I should have done receipts here. Geez. All right, I'm fixing this because in just a second, we're gonna drop all the files in there. I want everything to actually be correct. You can save this and use this later on. So we're gonna fix it because, you know, that's what we do. We make mistakes, we fix them. And then we call that receipts. And from receipts, perfect. Now let's run this because now we just created this receipts table and we're placing this in here. In our catalog, we should now see, we can get rid of this purchase orders. And I'm just gonna come over here and delete this real quick, just because that was an accident. Now we can go into receipts, and if we look at our sample data, our data should be in there, and that is perfect. Now, this is not just a one-time use for this code. We can use this as much as we want. Let's go into our default, because this is where we're storing our data. Let's go to our final project, and let's upload. I'm gonna go to browse. Let's upload these new files. Now, these new files are very similar, but they are not the same. Let's upload these. And now we have a bunch of new data in here. All we have to do, because we just put like 15 new files or 10 new files in there, all we have to do now is come over here and run all. That's it. So all I'm gonna click is run all. It'll run all of our code down to the bottom. And we have, I guess, 13 different cells that we use. It's gonna run all of these, and then it should work. Now, real quick, I wanna make sure, fix error here. Let me make sure we don't have an error message somewhere. I think that's just some AI labeling thing. All right, let's run all, and let's see if it works. This should take a minute or two, and then we'll have all of our data completely classified and put into our tables. All right, that took about 1 minute to run. It looks like everything ran successfully. Let's go back to our catalog. Let's come in here, and we have all of our tables. And now let's look at our sample data. And we have a lot more data in here now. And it looks like everything worked perfect. Let's go to our purchase order. We've got some more data in here now, because we only had 3 before, so we had 2 more. And then let's look at our receipts, and there's our new data. And there we go. I have done similar things to this in the past in real work using, PDFs and all sorts of different documents. It was 10 times harder than this. This is really just awesome to use. It's a fantastic tool. And if you have to do something like this is like the first place that I would go. I really hope you enjoyed this project. I thought it was super fun. I've done stuff like this in the real world in the past, and IDP just makes it really easy within Databricks. I wish I had this many years ago when I was doing this kind of work. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.